So we're going to do this session the same way that we did the last session, where we've got this almost like a bookmarking system here on the left, where if it is highlighted in blue, that is the part we're discussing. Once it has been highlighted in green, it means that we are done with that part. So you'll have to go back if you want to know more about it. Right. So Google Fundamentals 3, this at this point the whole thing becomes a little bit more interactive, and when we're going to present it as a webinar, we want to present it in a more interactive way. So you'll see the way that the time has been set out. um, there's quite a lot of time for self exploration included in this webinar. The idea is it's going to be it's going to be a little bit of a, I'm going to open up something, I'll show you how to do it, and then you explore yourself. Obviously, not in this session. This session is just a show and tell. But when you are presenting it, you have 2 hours to use for that. So that there's, when you're presenting a webinar, it feels a little bit awkward, but people really appreciate that opportunity to actually go to a new tab and try and implement the stuff that they've just seen you do, and then to have the trainer available to ask questions when they're doing that. So the very first thing we want to tackle when we're going to talk about Google Docs is just simply how we access and create a Google Doc. So the route for this, there are 2 ways to go about doing this basically. The one is when we open a new tab, we can go to the waffle, open up the waffle, and you'll see if we click on Docs, it'll take me straight to Google Docs. This screen, which essentially where I can choose a template, or I can go have a look at my recent documents. If you want to, obviously, you can create a blank document there as well. Now, that is one way to do it, and this is often the way that people use. What I always do is I just type docs.google.com. It auto completes for me usually as well because I go to it quite often. So, but that is just how I get to it. However, a slightly different way, one that I actually recommend more so than doing it that way around, is to access Google Docs through Google Drive. Now, the reason for that is if we open up Google Drive and we navigate to the folder that we want the file to be in. Otherwise, and I'll show you now again, we spoke about this last time when we spoke about Drive, is it becomes a mess because you can see there, untitled spreadsheet, untitled spreadsheet, untitled spreadsheet, untitled document. Everything just goes into your root folder. So we actually want to, rather than that, we want to navigate to the appropriate place. So right, let's say we go to a folder, we want to create it in this folder. If you now right click in this folder, it gives you the option to go straight into your different Google apps. So what's nice now is we organize it already before doing anything else. Now, if I go into this folder it calls itself editable, inside this folder, if I create the Google Doc here, it already has all the sharing rights attached to it that's attached to the folder. So if you're working in a shared folder environment between yourself, between colleagues, or in whatever setup it might be, this usually works very well. Obviously, you can create it and copy to the folder as well, but this is often just a way of keeping things a little bit more organized. So then we just go create and share. Because we are adding it to a shared folder, it gives me the option to create and share rather than just create. Right, so there we go. There we've got our blank document open. We have it open here. Now, I've hidden the editing panel, so let's just open that again. If you want to hide the menus, just show yourself a little bit more space, then you can easily click on that button. For the most part, this is really only useful when you are presenting things. Most of the time, you want all of these menus here at the top. Now, something that people get confused with quite a bit is the naming of the thing. It really is as simple as clicking on this untitled document, and then we just call it new document, right? And there we go. Now we've created our new document. Okay. Then from here, you can then edit your document. You can start working on your document, whatever you want to do. Just a little thing that I also want to show you. If you haven't done it that way around, if you've created it somewhere else, the move button, just to move it to a different space in Google Drive, is over here. Always a very useful thing. So if you just click on that, it'll open up this little dialog, something that we've seen a few times by now. And from here, you can move it to any folder that you want to move it to. And again, the editing rights, just remember if you move it out of a folder that has certain editing rights, the file will not have those same editing rights. It'll revert to whatever the editing rights is on the new folder, right? So where if I want to move it to somewhere else, then I can move it to somewhere else then as well. Now, um, okay. So here's our new document. If I wanted to take this document now and I want to convert it to a Word file, right? So because, well, no, it's not often that we're going to do it that way around, but very often we want to do it the other way around. So if I want to convert it, it's a simple case of going File, Download, and then you can download it as a Microsoft Word document. You can download it as any kind of as different ones. The PDF is probably the other one you might use from time to time. Just note the minute that it's downloaded, it's no longer an online collaborative kind of space that you have. You now have your own copy of it, and whatever happens on that copy is not reflected on the online copy. The reason why I want to show you how to do this, I don't know, I don't have many Word documents on my computer, so I just wanted to quickly download that one. Now I've got a Word document over here. If you haven't done this as well, here's just a little quick Chrome trick as well. If you've got files that are that show up here in the bottom, because this is our downloads tab, it's very quick to just click and drag something from there into the Google Spaces as well. So if I just want to upload something, let's say I downloaded something from another website, it'll appear over here, and I can just upload it again. Now, if I want to upload this document, I can just quickly go and drag and drop, and it's again, it'll just quickly upload the file. Right, there we go, new document. Now, note here, it has a different icon. This is the Google Docs icon, and that is Google's icon for a Word document. Now, if I double click on this, it's not actually going to open up in an editor. It opens up in something that is actually a lot more like a PDF reader, in the sense that it's not editable. However, you can go open with Google Docs, and then it'll open your Word document in Google Docs, and it's actually still editable. It will edit your Google document for you, right? So with that little icon over there, it tells you it is still a Word document. Just a word of warning. Um, if you are going to Word documents do not, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well, but Word documents will not convert 100% to a Google Doc. So you'll have to have a look. It does a few funny things, because especially the way that Google Docs deals with images is very different than how Word works with images. So if it's a document with lots of images, it might get a little bit jumbled up, and things like tables and borders and frames, it deals with that a little bit differently. Um, so just keep that in mind. If you then want to convert this document, you can just simply say File, Save as Google Docs. Then we've got a Google. Now, then we'll end up having a Google Doc. Just a little tip, but it's something I don't actually recommend. In Google Drive, if you go to your settings for Google Drive, you can. There's a setting. Can't remember exactly. Oh yes, yeah, convert uploads, that actually says convert uploaded files to Google Docs editor format. When you click on that, it actually means convert all of your. So if you're going to upload a PowerPoint or a Google, not Google, or a Excel sheet, anything like that, it converts it automatically. I don't recommend using this. I recommend uploading your original files, opening them like I showed you now, opening that file by going right click and open with Google Docs. Rather do it that way, see how it converts, and then you can convert it if you want to. Okay, so uh, I think, sorry, we just quickly went over that. So yes, the conversion between Word and Docs. Remember, the key thing with working in a if you're going to work with it in Docs, is it becomes it can become a collaborative tool. You don't need to convert it though. This Word document as it is, I can always open it with Google Docs, and I can edit it in there, and the Word document itself will update. It does a few funny things sometimes. I prefer to work exclusively in just the Google apps, because it just works. I know I know it won't have strange things happening to it, but a lot of people are more comfortable with Word and still working in Word and still working in Excel and still working in PowerPoint. Just to show you, it's very quick and easy to convert. The same principle applies to the others, but we'll get to those as well. Right, so now we're just going to jump back to the Google fundamentals. What we want to look at now is just the basic formatting tools. Some of the simple stuff that you can, or the basic elements of Google Docs. Now, when you get to that point, the idea is to follow. There's a link in this outlines, the course outline that you'll have. If you have share this link, um, it'll take you to a screen that looks like this, Google Docs template, where you just click on make a copy. Right? What it does is it's going to make a copy of a specific Google Doc template. Now, when you are discussing how Google Docs works with with the audience, my suggestion is to actually do open up this template, discuss this template with them, and then once you've done some of it, share the link with them. Don't share it with them first and then start explaining, because the minute that you share the link with them, they will click on it and they will go to that and they will only listen to your presentation for half an year. First, show them and then give them the time to explore and to do this on their own. Right, so the first thing, obviously, rename the document to Google TT, your name. So renaming over here, and we just quickly change it to Google TT. Right, so then I've changed it. Now change this text to heading 1. Um, when it comes to formatting tools, just a quick, we'll get to that in a minute. But um, some of the basic formatting tools, I'm going to jump around now a little bit so that we follow the instructions over here. So just some of your basic formatting tools you'll find over here at the top: bold, italics, underline, font color, the font itself, the size of the font, all those little things that we need to be able to use. So in this instance, select the paragraph, change the color to black and the font to Century Gothic. So we select the paragraph, we click over here, change it to Century Gothic. The font, we want to change to black. The highlighting, we want to remove. Yes, and then we've done all those things. So there we go, font color, highlighting, etc., etc. All your different formatting tools. It's very much the same as Word, and they'll just need to get used to a slightly different place where it's located, all these different tools. Right, so it is, again, it's very straightforward, these things. One of the one of the things that also I think works quite well, but I mean, it's something that you can play around with. And here's your other tools as well. It's just not displaying quite the way, or not all of it's displaying because the screen's quite zoomed in. Um, but I don't want to go into too much detail with the basic formatting tools. Line spacing is also quite a useful little thing to do when you want to just space out your entire document a little bit. You can change it to double, or we can change it to 1.5 or 1.5, or you can just have custom spacing, etc., etc., etc. Lots of different options to play around with to make sure that your document looks good. Right, so then when we get to images, now when it comes to images, inserting images in Google Docs is one of the first bits I think that really won me over in terms of how quick and easy it is to insert images. Now in this instance, I've already got an image inserted, which I need to replace. So when I click on an image, and this is also a good time for the audience to start getting used to the three dots, which is quite often like a right click type of thing. In this instance, obviously the Google Docs has a right click enabled, but it is an important thing to see are more options, right? But in this instance, we simply want to replace the image. Now, when we get to inserting images, there's a whole bunch of different options, but the ones that you will probably end up using quite a bit is the one where we've got by URL or search the web. Now, search the web is really powerful because if we say search the web, it actually brings up a Google Images search dialog over here immediately in this little on the right sidebar for you. So now we're just going to say random image, right? Let's see what it gives me. and here's a whole bunch of random images that it's given me. So let's just select this one because it feels, oh, this one, I suppose, adding some color. So if I click on it, I've selected it. Now, right? So someone just needs to quickly mute themselves there. All right. So if I've selected it and I can just replace this image, and it just replaces the image with the one that I found there. So what's quite nice again is if it's very quick and easy to insert images. If I go to insert image, it gives me all these options that I have. So again, search the web. If we were, for example, to search for Shakespeare, if we were writing creating a document, there we've got images of Shakespeare. We click on an image we like, and you can also select multiple images. If you want to select multiple images, they have got 5 images selected, and I click insert, and it's now going to insert all 5 of those images, rather large images, into my Google Doc. Right? Let's just undo because we don't want to do that. It really is as quick and easy as that. Another useful thing in using this way of inserting images, if you go to search the web, all of these images are free to use, are automatically licensed images. So when you open up a new tab and you go to Google and you search for something, right? So let's go, we're going to search for Shakespeare over here again. And you go to that and you click on images. The images that you'll find in Google Images over here are not necessarily licensed images that you are allowed to use for free. So just keep that in mind. However, if we find, for example, an image here that if we can't find the images in the embedded search function that we have over here, then sometimes we have to search in Google Images in this way, because images are not necessarily not free to use. Just we know that the ones that are included in the search ones have been specifically licensed, etc. Um, that's a discussion for another day. But let's say we want this image specifically. We did not find this one. So what works well is if you just click on that image, once it is loaded, you right click and you say copy image address. So now when we go back here and we say insert image by URL, we paste the right click and paste the image, and it'll find the image, and I just simply say insert, and there we go. There we have the image that we wanted. It's as simple as that. Right, so now one or two things about images and how they work a little bit differently in Google Docs than in something like Word. In Word, you have more options for spacing and moving and etc. with images. Google Docs does not give you all those options. So what sometimes people use Microsoft Word to create pamphlets or posters or things like that. However, the idea, Google did not want to have other things that you can use to do that. That's the intention. So they've actually only given you these 3 options for moving your image around: inline, wrap text, and break text. So if we're going to say wrap text, you'll see this is the one where we've got the images are moving around and wrapping around the image. So this is a function they have improved considerably because it has it's working a lot better than it used to. And then break text, of course, very similar to what we've done in the past, right? Or what the options were. I see this thing is moving a lot better than it used to. Then you also have the option to change the margin, which is quite nice and very easy to do. I just let's say we're going to drop down. We're going to say we want a bit of a silly margin. We'll make it 1, 1, 1. So then we've got a 1-inch margin. So you can see it's a very big margin around it. And you'll see once you start playing around with these things, there's a few options for recoloring, adjustments, etc., etc. We're not going to go into all those details now. Let's just go back to a smaller margin. Right. So there you have inserting images and something that makes it very quick and easy to do, really. Right. So the next thing I want to look at specifically is this document outline and styling. Let's just remove that because it doesn't need to be there. And the first thing, this is why I just skipped over this one. Change this text to heading 1. Now, the document outline and styling is quite a useful tool to use and something we don't often use because we tend to just type out our thing. And then if we want to make this a heading, we'll just make it bold and we'll just change the size to make it a little bit bigger. Now, there's a specific reason why these outlines are quite useful. If I select this and I click on styles over here, and I select the different styles that I have. So there's automatic styles that have been built in. You can just select this one, drop down, and we'll go to heading one, and we just say apply heading one, right? So then it'll change this one to heading one. And we could select this and just say we want to say heading two, but let's say we've already defined the heading. Then there's the option to say update heading two to match. We're going to say update heading two to match. What that means is now I've essentially changed the styling for heading two. So if I say heading two, you'll see this one is now the same as that. The reason why this is useful and why this is something that you can use throughout your document is what happens is you've got this document outline, which is automatically created based on the headings that you have. And these act as little links that you can use through your document. So if it becomes quite a lengthy document, if you're going to create one Word document or one Google Doc, for example, containing all the information on Shakespeare, then it's going to have a lot of scrolling involved, obviously. Now, once learners get more comfortable and used to this, then if we go back to this Google Fundamentals, you'll see there's a document outline. I don't know how many of you have used this since engaging, but if you click on the document outline, you'll see this actually links you to all the various things that you can use. So if I click on module one, it'll just jump to module one, module two, jump to module two, three, four, etc., etc. So it jumps around to the different modules that I have. Okay, these are all here at the same space. So, and you'll also see it basically creates sort of like an index for you automatically. And what I'm not going to show you how that works now, but if it comes to creating a table of contents, if you've used your headings correctly, then it's very easy to just go to just add a table of contents to the beginning of your Google Doc, and the table of contents itself is also an interactive thing that you click on the different parts of it, and it jumps to different parts in your Google Doc. So that's why it's it's something that we often don't do, but it's a very important little habit to form, to use these things and then to obviously update them. So if I were to update something, you just select it, you'll see it's all written as normal text, the styles, you select it and we change it to whatever we want. And again, we can update these to change to the color, the font, the size, the font weighting, and whether it's underlined, etc., to exactly how we want, and then we just update it. And remember, because I've set it, if I were to change this to red, for example, and I go to heading 2 and I say update heading 2, you'll see this one is also going to change along with it. So there's only one place where I need to change the setting, and then everything that has that style defined is automatically updated. Right. Then we'll get to these little things in a second, but let's just quickly talk about collaboration tools, editing and commenting. Actually, before we get to that, the table to create a frame for questions 3 to 6. Now, lots of people use insert in or use shapes that they draw in Word to create tables and to create certain things. Now, in this instance, there is a way to do it, but it's a bit of a hassle to insert a drawing. So usually, it's not something we do a lot in Google Docs. You also can't put two images on top of each other and things like that. If you want to do that, you'll have to use Google Draw to create those images for you, which is just something that struggles a little bit with that. It's not ideally suited to doing that. I suggest doing it in a slightly different way if one has to. But if you want to just create a frame for something as an example, the easiest and probably the way that that people end up using the most is the idea of inserting a table. So it's a simple case of going to insert table, and if you're going to insert a frame, we'll just do a 1x1 block. There we go. There's our 1x1 block. The instructions is here. Use the table to create a frame for questions 3 to 6. So we'll just select questions 3 to 6. just cut them quickly and we'll paste them over here. And there we go. We've got our frame for the questions, right? Looks like a normal frame that will that we would have drawn in any other editing tool. You can again adjust the size of the table if you wanted to make this frame a little bit bigger. Why can't I? There we go. So there we've made our frame a little bit bigger so that it fills more space on the table itself. You'll see the actual the actual page size is set to smaller than what the frame is that we've drawn, but because it's a table, it's not limited to that size specifically. So we've got our table like that. What actually works quite nicely sometimes, if you want it to fill the entire page, is you can select it to fill the entire page, and then give it a background full and things like that. Right. So again, you can play around with how you use that part of the tool. Then when we get to collaboration tools, editing and commenting. Now, when it gets to editing and commenting, this is where the real power in the tool actually lies. Is if we start sharing it with our colleagues and start collaborating on a document. So what I'm going to do quickly, and Ashrik needs to jump in here, hopefully. I'm just going to share this. Actually, let's add Ashrik. I don't know in which one he's doing it now. So we're just going to add him as an editor quickly. I'm going to share it with him anyway, and hopefully he'll jump in a second. So what I can do now that I've shared it with him, just to show you a quick little trick here, if I'm going to paste this link, right? So I've pasted a link in the Meet chat. Now, Asher can go to his Gmail. He'll see there's a message in his Gmail on his Gmail that he has received, or that this file has been shared with him. He can go to his shared with me, etc., or he can click on this link and he'll jump into it immediately. If you click on this link, you'll see you don't have access to it and you'll request access. Now you see there's Ashrik. He's already entered Hi Yaku, and I can also see a little his name appears over there. Ashrik Don has joined the session, and I can see where his cursor is. So he can move around and he can do all sorts of things on this because I've given him full editing rights, right? As you can see, he's now highlighting certain things. He's made it bold, and now he's making it bigger, etc., etc. So I can give him access to this if I wanted to. Now, what I'm going to do, Ashrik, is I'm going to lower your access to this thing. I'm going to change him to a commenter only, right? Now, if I change it to this, what it means is he doesn't have access to edit this thing anymore. He only has access to view it, but he can add comments as well. Now, just to show you quickly how this is a little bit different, in the top right corner here of the toolbar, at least, you'll see there's a little pen over here that gives you different options. Now, because I've got full editing rights, I can actually edit the document as much as I want to. And Ashrik had that option. That's why he was able to go and say, hi, Yaku, and add those things. But now he'll only have suggesting mode. Now, what suggesting mode is a little bit different is he can now select something. He might have to refresh on his side. I'm not 100% sure. Right? Can you see now he's selecting something? He won't be able to delete these things anymore, but he will be able to select something and then hit delete. And what happens is you'll see there's a little green line that appears. That means it hasn't actually been deleted, but the suggestion is that it should be deleted. The same applies to anything that I want to do, and I can actually add new things. So let's say I'm going to add, go enter. This is another thing we should include. Right, so you'll see all of these things. I think over here is probably something anyway, so you'll see all these little things are suggestions that have been made. It hasn't actually been accepted yet. Now, if I scroll to the right, so if I scroll to the right over here, you'll see there's Ashrik. He said what we should do is we should delete name. Now I can either accept this or I can say no. And he's also added some information or some more to this. So if I click on it, I can say, I don't think we should. and I say reply, and so he'll see this message, and in this we can have a whole discussion about what we think we should do. But the minute that I say accept suggestion, our discussion goes away, and the suggestion part of it goes away as well. Right. So suggestion mode, it's one of the things about the suggestion mode that I'm not wild about the fact that once it has been accepted, it goes away, because I want to actually be able to keep track of these things. Um, and the same applies here. Here I suggested hi, delete Yaku. If I accept it, accept suggestion, it'll actually be applied. Whatever it says, I've said here. If I go over here to publish your document, I'm going to say reject suggestion. And then again, the suggestion, whatever it is, goes away. Format list, these things, etc., etc. So this is how the suggestion mode works. That's quite nice. The other way that you can do things as well is when we insert comments. So again, with a viewing mode, if I select something, whenever I've got something selected, this little block appears over here that says add comment. Or if I right click on it, I can also say comment. Now, I'm just quickly going to, I don't want to add a D there. Um, so I'm just going to select this, change this text to heading, and I'm going to say add a comment. Now, when I say add a comment, I can just say this seems like a great idea. Comment. Now, Ashik will have access to this, and he would actually love this. Right, so he said love this, but I can now reply, etc., to whatever it is that he's saying. What is quite nice, though, and this is something that not a lot of people do, if I use the @ sign, I can actually assign this to someone. So let's say, for example, I want to say I'm going to assign it to Anita van Vieren. What happens then is, because I've used the @ she will receive an email directing her to this comment that says she needs to pay attention to this specific thing, um, which is again, it's a very good way of directing the message to certain people, adding the @ sign to something, and again it goes through your contacts list and it'll direct it to someone specifically. So let's say I'm going to select this little part, I'm going to add a comment, and I'm going to say @ and now I'm running out of space a little bit. So there we're going to say @, and if I say assign to * Don, there's specifically a slightly different way, but it needs to be the first message that I send. Assign to * Don, there's a slightly different message that he'll receive, and I'm going to say assign, and he will now get a message specifically that this thing has been assigned to him. You'll see it's a little bit different. So the message that has been sent to him will be different than just a normal comment that has been added in. A comment doesn't necessarily, see, there we go. It's something that's been assigned to me that Ashik has done here. So if I click on this, sorry, the screen's struggling a little bit with the size. If I click on this and I can say it's been assigned to me, I'm going to say it looks fine, fine, and I can leave it there. Now, if you are moderating a test or something like that, this becomes an incredibly useful to have this in place as evidence of moderation that has happened, evidence that that you've engaged this thing. And what's even nicer about this, of course, or what I very much loved about this, is the document that you're working on is the same document. So if I've set up a test and I send it to my colleagues, they open it up and they then engage with it. But if they see little mistakes, the little things that they think needs to change, then they can change it themselves. I can go in and I can see what's actually happened. Now, that part of it that's also important to take note of is this version history. Everything that you do is saved automatically. So if I click on the version history, so this is here at the top next to when I'm opening up my different menus. If I click on the version history, what happens is it shows me the different things that's happened here. I can actually click on the arrow and it'll show me every little edit that we made today. So if I decide, you know what, I'm going to be honest, the minute that I allowed Ashrik access to this thing, he started changing things that he really shouldn't. I could just click on the version. The last version that I can see was not edited by him, and then just say restore version, and everything is restored back to the way it was before anything else happened. And if I realize, but he's just messing around with this thing, I click on the share button again. You'll see he's over here, and I can just click and remove him from this as well. This give temporary access is actually also quite a useful new addition that they've added to the G Suite. So if I say temporary access, then I give him access as a commenter for a short while, not as a permanent as an editor, but he can only have access to it for a while, and then his access goes away. So I'm going to remove him, and I'll save, and now no one has access to this anymore. Right. So when you talk about collaboration tools, with with your colleagues, what actually works very well in the presentation. I'm going to do it now, and I'll show you for a few seconds why it is quite fun. Is we open up the link sharing, we click on anyone with a link, and we actually allow them to be an editor. So what happens now is if I copy this link, it's the same one we pasted in a minute ago, and I paste it over there. So in the chat, if you click on that link, you'll see suddenly everyone. And there we see now the people start coming in. Trevor is in. And we'll see he's doing stuff. And everyone can just go wild if they want to. They can just select, and you're welcome to come and destroy my document for a second or two. All right, there we go. Nice and big. Publish your document. So what's quite fun about this is in this moment, what I've always seen happen is teachers start there's something in their heads that starts ticking, and when they start considering the potential of this, what they could do with this tool possibly, which is quite cool to see. And then again, they go crazy. They do whatever they want to do, and they change things around. Oh yeah, something that very few people use, but it is something that is quite, I think, quite nifty. It would be nice if more of us actually start using this. You'll see now that everyone is in here. There's a chat panel that I can open up over here. Hey everyone, which kind of just opens up a little chat screen with the people that have connected to the document. So I can see that you are on the document, and I can tell you that. Right, so now Trevor and myself can actually have a conversation in the chat panel that doesn't go to the comment section or anything like that. We can just talk about what's happening here, and then you'll see here there's Anonymous Turtle and Anonymous Loris, all these people on here. Right, so now when all of this is happening, I realize, oh wait, this was a disaster. I'm going to quickly go and I'm going to remove your editing rights. I'm going to restrict it. And I'm going to say done. Now, it's quite possible that some of you will still have access to go and mess around with this because it's already open. It's obviously, it doesn't, I'm not 100% sure how quickly it updates. I don't know if you can still see if you can mess around with it anymore. I see a lot of people are still on it. It's not going to kick you out necessarily because you're already on it, but I can just change it again. And then again, we'll go to the last edits that have been made. And of course, this is quite a cool way that we can see who are the ones that are doing the different edits by clicking on it, and it'll show me the people that are doing different edits. So Ashik has done something there, etc., etc. All sorts of stuff happening. But we're going to go back to this one. We want to keep it all nice and tidy. We'll restore this version, and there we go. Right. So the last thing on our list is the idea of transforming to a hyperdoc and a published doc. Now, the hyperdoc, all that the hyperdoc really refers to is the ability to add links to a document. Because a Google Doc is by nature an online thing, it really works well when we start adding links to in our document. So if you've got again, let's use the Shakespeare example. If we're going to have a long document on Shakespeare, you can add links to videos, you can add links to online assessment tools, you can add links to all sorts of different things that a learner can open the document, and it can become sort of like a navigational thing. Jump to this, jump to that, jump to this, jump to that, so that you create something like an index to content for them using a Google Doc. It's something that I've always enjoyed. I used to do this a lot as a teacher, adding little extra additional resources for those learners that really want to dive into the more things than just the information. So I'll create a Google Doc with everything on it that they need, and then a whole bunch of breakout links if they really want to go and learn even more. So adding a link is really as simple as selecting something, and then you can right click on it and you say link, right? If we link it, then it will, right? So you can also create anchor links, of course, if you've got headings in your document. So let's say you've got the headings are created by the document outlines. So again, why it's very important to use the document outline tools, heading 1, heading 2, paragraph, etc. So you can link to a different heading as well, that jumps within your document to different parts of it if you wanted to do that. You can link, I think these are just the things I've opened up recently. And then when we go to, or we can just simply link to something. So we'll just go to docs.google.com, right? So we'll just link to docs.google.com, right? So there I have a link. Oh, sorry, I'm still in suggesting mode, editing mode. Let's just make it google.com. Right, so there's a link to google.com. And they can click on it, and they will, if you click on it, it'll go take me to google.com. Now, something that's also quite cool about the links, if I, for example, have Century Gothic and I want to create a link for this, and I say insert link, the shortcut for it's Control K, by the way, what it actually gives me is it runs a very quick Google search, and it goes to the first thing that it finds on the list. So if I insert that, then I can just say Century Gothic, select it, and there we go, apply, and I've created a link to Century Gothic. So it's just a quick way to add a few links to your document. If you've got something that I often had, that just a very nice way of adding a little bit of interactivity. If you've got a poem and the poet's name is in there, so right, so we've got Walt Whitman, for example. I'll just select his name and I'll add a link, and it'll, I don't know if I misspelled it now. Right, there we go. And it'll immediately give me the first entry, which is very often Wikipedia, by the way. But it's still nice. I can click on that. So if a learner opens the poem will be there, and the name. If he's interested, he can click on this, and it'll take him. And he opens it up, and it'll actually take him to a Wikipedia entry on Walt Whitman. Right, now the last thing we want to do then is to look at a published document. Now, there's all sorts of different applications for this. You can decide how you want to use it, but it's just something that's quite nice about the published document. Remember, if I'm going to share a document with different people, what they immediately see is they'll see the document opened up in the Google Docs editor. Now, if you want to have all these things removed, you want to create something that's almost like, I sometimes explain it as, it's almost like a pseudo web page that you build. If you publish to the web, I'm sorry, let me just go do that a little bit slower. File, publish to the web. What happens here is you create and we say publish. Do you want to publish the selection? The selection is basically the whole thing. Then it creates a slightly different version of the page. Now, there's the link. It's a super long link, so you can use a bit.ly or a QR code or whatever you want to use on this to shorten it up a little bit, just to display it a little bit nicer. Or you can just send it like that. Just one or two things you need to note about this. What is very nice is you can actually, if you're on a G Suite, your school's got a G Suite account, you can limit the access to only learners within your account, or teachers, or at least people who are on your domain. I'm not going to do that. Obviously, if you don't have that, then it'll be open to anyone. Anyone can access it. By default, when something is published to the web, it's supposed to be open that anyone can view it. You only have this option if you're running a G Suite. But then also what's quite cool is it's automatically republished when changes are made. So it's not like you're going to publish it, it's once and it's done. It'll remain online, it'll remain published. So if we then open up this link just to show you how it looks a little bit different, So what's nice about this, as you can see, is I don't have the Google Docs editing panels or anything like that. I see something that looks like this. All the links are still working. Everything that is in there was still working. Um, the one thing that it does remove is page color. So if you change the page color, then that won't work anymore. But you'll see everything is still there the way it was. So this is quite a cool way of creating a very easy, quick index to online content, is by creating an index, having a link, or sharing a link to it, and then from there they can break out and find different things. So just to explain quickly what the submission for module 3 needs to look like. I think we've done everything here. Yes. So you're going to send this link that I've created is going to be your submission. You need to rename it. There's the name. This has been changed to heading 1. I've changed, okay, this one has been changed now by a lot of you, but you understand, I think, what needs to happen here. Then replace this image with any other image. It really doesn't matter. You can make it your face. You don't have to if you don't want to. This text needs to link to something. We say docs.google.com, and then you need to create a table. There's the table, and this is the published document that you see. So if this were submitted, you would almost pass. This would just be wrong because, well, we changed it to something that's wrong now. Right. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I'm going to go straight to the next thing now. I don't want to, I'm not going to leave time for questions now. We'll add time for questions at the end of the whole thing. Right, so I see there aren't any questions in the chat panel anyway. Right, so the next module we want to look at is now module 4. Now, if we go to module 4, I don't know why this one doesn't want to jump to module 4. I'm not sure what's wrong with this thing, huh? Right, so if we look at module 4, module 4 is a bit more of a jam-packed one because we are tackling both sheets and slides. Now, the reason why we decided to put the two of them together is because in module 3, there's a big part of the focus that has to be on the collaboration tools part of it, because Google Docs is a great introduction to that part of the thing. Now, Google, obviously in Google Slides and in Google Sheets, all of that still applies. Editing, commenting, all of those tools are still accessible in Google Docs and in Google Slides. But when it comes to module 4, the focus is not going to be on that part of things. The assumption is that we will have covered it to a good enough extent in module 3 that we don't need to dive into it again in module 4. Right. So just so that you understand the idea behind it, it is a bit more. It can become a little bit more complicated, this part of things, especially when we start getting to Google Sheets, because you can do incredible things with Google Sheets once you start understanding how Google Sheets actually works, or all the little intricacies of Google Sheets. Right. So the first thing we want to look at, accessing and creating a Google slide. Exact same way that we do it with Google Docs. You can either access it through the waffle, where we see there's sheets and there's slides. So it's exactly the same principle of how you get to it. But it is exactly the same as I suggest with Google Docs, is that you actually do it through that you end up doing it through Google Drive, where you do it the same way. You right click Google Slides and we say blank presentation, right? So we can either create it like that and it'll create a blank presentation, or the same what we did with a Word file, we can upload a PowerPoint file and we can convert that, or we can edit it, etc. So the same principle applies. I'm not going to go into all that much detail there, but it's important when you're doing training that you just go through that process again, because you can't necessarily assume that everyone who's in the Fundamentals 4 training session necessarily did Fundamentals 3 as well, because we wanted to have the option that people who know Docs already but are curious about slides and sheets, they can jump in at the end. So you'll have to just go through that process again. But seeing as we did it less than an hour ago, I'm not going to go through that whole process again. So then we dive into the same basic principle with docs. We've got a template. I'm going to open up this template. You can share this link. Something that I didn't show you the first time around. If you're opening up the Google Fundamentals course outline and you right click on the share this link, you right click on that and you say copy link URL. It'll automatically copy that link into your clipboard, and you can just paste that link on your in your chat panel. What I want to just stress again, I said it last time in our training session, I'll say this again. The, the, the link for submission of evidence of learning is for the trainers. It's not for our participants. Our participants can open up their templates and they can play around to their heart's content. The idea is not that they need to submit whatever it is that they do, but it is a useful place for them to play around, and it gives them a little bit more direction than just, this is open, do whatever you want to do. Right, so let's see what the template actually asks us to do. We'll make a copy. I just need to remember to go and delete all of these copies. Right, so the first thing it says, change this title to your name, and then change the theme of the presentation. Right, so we'll first look at the templates, the themes at least, and how they work. But just changing this title to your name, it's as simple as clicking on it. You'll see there's a little box that appears around it, which means I've selected this. Now I can edit it. I'm just going to change this to Jacob van Niekerk. What we haven't done, but you can do this if you want to. It's the same as in Docs. You'll click over here, and then you can change the name of this thing. Jacob van Niekerk, like Google TT. So there we have it. Now change the theme of the presentation. Use default ones or import. Now, when I want to change the theme, the easiest way to do this is when you actually open up the whole presentation. If you haven't selected anything, this little theme button will appear here. The minute you've selected it, it's going to open up the editing options, the formatting options, etc. of that element, and then the theme button disappears, and then you need to go and find it. You can still find it, but the easiest thing to do is just when you're opening up this thing, before you go and do anything else, just first select a theme. Now, there's a couple of default themes. There's not a lot of default themes that have been built into Google Slides, because you also have this option to import a theme, which I'm not going to show you now. But if you actually have any kind of downloaded theme, any theme that you've used before, you can just import a theme from another template that you've used. But for the purposes of what we're going to do now, we're just going to simply select a theme that is already there. We'll just select it, and we can select this one. It doesn't really matter which one we want to select. I think this one's a bit nicer, especially if I look at number 2, and I say import theme. Sorry, not import theme. I've already selected it, so I don't need to actually now do anything else. So once I've clicked on it, it changes to that theme automatically. And we close. Now, when I want to add, when I want to add slides, or before we go on here, with the slides templates, what you can also have a look at is if you click on view and go to master. What master will bring is they actually take you to the master slide of the whole thing. So if you edit this, open this up, and you'll see the different fonts over here have all been selected, and they've all got kind of a default theme applied to them. Now, if I wanted to, for example, I don't like this font, I'm going to change to that font. The minute I do that, it changes everything that's part of that. It's the same kind of principle as editing the styling options in Google Docs, the same kind of principle here. This is just a very quick way. If we want to change, if we don't like the font Roboto, and this is the default font, I just select it and I change it to something else, for example. Poppins is one that we use for our foundation phase because apparently it meets all the criteria for them. Those of you who know, I can't remember, the ABC Junior, I think, is the thing they often use in Word. We found that Poppins is kind of the same type of thing. It has the correct A and the correct T, etc., etc. So have a look at that if you want to use it. But let's just change it to something a little bit more interesting. We're going to change all the fonts to that. So you can edit your master over here, and it'll change the different it'll change it for all of your slides. So you don't have to go through the slides one by one and make the changes. So I'll just make that black as well. Actually, this is an entirely unreadable font, so let's just keep it simple and leave it like that. Right, so there we go. There it's changed. Now I can just close this, and you'll see the different things have already been changed. Right, so that's the first step, is just to show them what the slides templates looks like, adding the slide template, and just a very quick view of the master. So again, view master takes us to that part of the slide. Right, then the part that you're going to have to Teacher's Pet. Sorry, that's the one that they use, Teacher's Pet. So Teacher's Pet is the font that's often used in the foundation phase, because it has all the needs and the criteria that looks like the correct writing, especially I think it's the A and the T and all sorts of things. Now, the one we found that works quite well is the font that I just used. Poppins is the thing's name. Right, anyway, so then you can go through the different basic slides formatting tools that we want to use. So simple things like drawing a shape, and you'll see here's instructions of all the different things that we can do. So the first thing we want to do is we want to just draw a full shape. Drawing shapes, over there's the shape icon. It'll take you to different shapes that you can use. Now, let's say we want to draw we're just going to draw a little rounded rectangle. So if I click here and I draw it, remember if you hold shift, it'll stay in a 1:1 size ratio. In other words, it'll make a square for you, or you can just click and draw it like that. There we see there is our little fold rounded rectangle. The little diamond over there allows me to change the roundness so that it's essentially two round circles. And then we can change. Here we see the full options and those different things. There's a gradient option that you can use. You can go to custom colors, etc., etc. I'm not going to go into all those details. There we've got a full little green block. Here we can change the line size and the type of line we use, and then also the line color that is being used. Now, what's also quite what sometimes is a little bit confusing, if you're going to just add text, as we often do, a text box, you're going to be able to change the shape of the thing specifically. So it'll remain a block. That's essentially what's going to happen. So what I often prefer to do is to draw a shape, and if you double click on the shape, you'll start typing in the shape as well. So this is a rounded rectangle, and there we go. There's our rounded rectangle. I can change the shape of this thing a little bit. Now, keep that in mind. So when we want to add text, it's actually quite often it's better, or I feel often it works better to actually add shapes, because if you've added a shape, then you've got the option to right click and say change the shape. So I've added as a rounded rectangle, but I want to change it so that it actually ends up being a call out. So we'll change it like that. So then I can change the shape to anything that I want to change it to. If it's a text box, you're limited to the fact that it's a box. It has to be the shape of a box. Right. So we'll have our little image shape that we inserted. Now changing the background, you'll see there's a little background option there. If we click on background, here you have the option to change the color that you want to, or we can choose an image that we'll add. So you can upload something. You can use by URL. So again, if you find a nice background, we can use Google image search. So let's say cartoon background. We want to use this one. Seems like a nice one. Or let's make it in space. Right. Feels like a space is going to work nicely. Right. So we'll click there, insert. Now, if you insert the background, okay, it's actually only inserting it to that part because this is what my theme has said. If we say add to theme, if we just say insert background for this one, we'll change the color to blue. Okay, now that's going to work. Right. So in other words, what we've got here is because our theme has set it to only be in this little one corner. We're going to say add to theme. So what's happened here is this specific theme has put the background over here and a white space over here. So this is also a good time to just show you if you're going to add new slides, if you just click on new slide, it just automatically creates a new slide. If we click on the drop down option, you'll see there's a whole bunch of different types of slides that you can add. So we could theoretically say, okay, but we're rather going to add this type of slide. I like this one. This works better for me. And we'll go back here, and I'm just going to change this background to black, and I'm just going to say done. So now I've only changed this background, and I haven't applied it to the whole presentation. Here I've used a specific layout that has a title. The title block is over there. There's a subtitle, and there's some text that I can add over there. Right. So here we've changed the background. You can use a color or a picture depending on what you want to do. Add one image. So when we add an image, it's the same basic principle as with Google, as we did in Google Docs. We go to insert image. We've got all the same options. We can search the web. We can upload. We can insert something from Drive or by URL. So we're just going to use search the web, and we look for cartoon character. Right, there's a whole bunch of different cartoon characters. We're just going to use this little guy. Insert, and there's our character. Right, now if I move him around, you'll see this. He's got quite a big white block around him, and we don't really want all of that. So when you've got something like that, we can crop it quite easily. If you click on the crop, you'll see it has a gray block around it, so we can just change that white block that it goes, that we change, no wait, we don't want to resize it, we just want to change the, crop it, okay, we've cropped it. It's still ahead of our little speech bubble, so we don't really want that. We're going to click on it, right click and say, order, send to back, so that it's actually behind that thing. All right, I can see it's still got a little bit of a background, but it's okay. So now I've inserted my image of this little cartoon character. Just a tip, if we want to insert a transparent thing, so let's say we're going to do the same thing, cartoon character, but we're just going to look for one with a transparent background. The more detailed you are with your search instructions, the better the more likely you are to end up finding something that's going to work for you. So let's say we're going to insert, trying to find one that actually has a transparent background. Okay, I think this one might. So what you can do, you can use the copy image address, or you can just say straight copy image. This is sometimes even easier, just to say copy image, go over here and just paste it. It doesn't have a transparent background, but anyway, so you can find your your images with transparent backgrounds in Google. The Google search often works a little bit easier when searching for specific things like that. Right. So what we also want to be able to do with the images is just add a little bit of, use some of the formatting options as well. So if I select the image, you'll see there's an option here that says format options. Okay. If I click on format options, it'll open this panel that gives me the different options that I can use for formatting. In this instance, often it works nicely just to add a bit of a drop shadow to something. So you'll see now I've got a drop shadow around my block, which is not really what I want in this instance, but just to show you how it works. And you can play around with that. We can lower the transparency, add to the blur radius, change the angle, the distance, etc., etc. We can play around with this drop shadow so that it works perfectly for us. What's also useful is playing around with the recoloring option sometimes. If we want to make it a printable thing and make it black and white, we can do that as well. You can play around with all the options there that we have in our format options. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to add a text box. So we'll just say insert text box, and we call this is a text box. Just to make sure everyone sees it's a text box, let's make sure that we give it a border, right? So this is a text box. We don't really need to add anything other than that with a text box. Right, let's just make 2 paragraphs here. So because I'll see the instructions. The next one is to add per paragraph. This is a text box. This is paragraph 2. Right, so There we go. There's our text box with our two paragraphs. Right. So this is just a quick way of adding content. Something else that I've always find quite nice is the line connectors, especially if we use the curved connectors, for example. You'll see when we start drawing little diagrams to different images that we've created. If we draw a line from the purple dots, so let's say we're going to draw a line from there to there, it creates this automatic little connector for me, which I can then again style if I want to make it a nice big clear connector. Let's add an arrow to it to both heads, right? And what's nice now is if I move things around, the lines stay where they were. So this works very well when you're drawing diagrams and trying to illustrate things using diagrams and shapes like that. Something that I like to do quite a lot. And the tool works very well. We can just change this if we realize, but we wanted to make reference to that point. We'll take it over there. We could just change the bend a little bit so that it moves out of the way of things. But yes, in that way you can play around with these different tools to create the kind of illustrations that you want. The arrows, as I said, the connectors, a very useful little tool that you can use. You'll see it's over there, the curved connector. Okay, and the same stuff you can use, add comments, etc. All those things that we saw in Google Docs. Now, what we want to look at next is just the how do we create animations in our presentation. Now, this is probably one of the parts that I like most about Google Sheets, Google Slides, is just how quick and easy it is to add animation. Now, if I want to add animation, in this instance, because I've zoomed in quite a bit and I'm not using the full screen, it won't display quite as well. But if I click on the image and I go to the more option, well, it won't display as more. Usually it'll just show animate. Once I click on animate, it opens up the animation pane over here. Now, if I've clicked on something, now let's say in this instance we want the box, the text box. We want this to appear. So I'll click on this and I'll say add animation. It gives me the options. How do I want it to happen? Fade in, on click, and I'm just going to add by paragraph as well, because that's part of what we want to do. And I want to have the shape is going to appear as well. I click add animation and then it just appears on click. And we're going to say add animation. And with the animation, you can do whatever you want with it. You can let it spin in, you can let it zoom in and zoom out. Again, fly in, fly out, etc. So you'll just need to keep your head there. Just keep in mind that there are way fewer effects for animation in Google Slides when compared to PowerPoint. Personally, I don't really use anything other than appear and disappear. I think it can be too distracting. But this is coming from a high school background, and now obviously from a teacher, from a professional development kind of view of things. Maybe in a more junior background, you want things to bounce in and to spin in and to do all sorts of things. I prefer to keep it simple when it comes to animation, that it doesn't take away too much of the message that you're trying to get across, but it really depends entirely on what you prefer to do. This is just personal preference. Right, so we'll say this is going to fly in from left. Just obviously remember, if you're going to animate something to say fly out, then the image will disappear. Fly in, then it will appear. So just keep that in mind. Same with zoom in and zoom out. In means it appears, out means it goes away. So we want this to fly in from top. And every time when we add animation, we can choose to let it either happen on click, after previous, or with previous. So this is the triggers that you have. What you can do is you can have lots of images and then click once and then they appear one by one without you having to click again, kind of as a trigger. And then you can set the speed at which it needs to happen as well. We're just going to leave all of this with the on click. And then if you want to test it out, you can just click on the play and it'll play in here. Now, I noticed what we've done here is we've added our little guy to basically appear twice. Let's say if we want to change it again, we'll just click on this and we will say, we don't want him to fly in, we want him to fly out to top. Right, so now he's going to appear. Now all that I do is I say play, and in this pane, without actually having to present the whole thing, it'll just show you, okay, so this is what we've got. There's the little guy. Now we're on the text box there, paragraph, there's the text box, paragraph two, there's the little, that image, and then our guy goes away again. Okay, so there are, I have basic little animation, how to add these different, the animation, and then the slide transition you'll find here as well. Um, if we click on transition, again, if is nothing selected, so just close this panel on the side. If nothing is selected, transition will appear there. You can click on that, and then you can select from some of the different transitions that you have. Let's just use the fade transition, and we'll apply it to all our slides. And then just to finalize the slides, what we've done, we can click on this, and we can just say present, just to see what it looks like. Okay, now it's going to obviously take over my whole screen. And there we go. There's the Google slide up and running for us. What obviously is quite nice is when you're presenting to open up your pointer. Something that I normally do when I've got a presentation up and running is we've got a pointer up and running so that we can point to certain things, go to the next one. Here's this next slide, and we'll click, and there's the little guy, there's my text box, there's all of that, and then the guy disappears, and we go to the last slide, which is a blank slide, and we'll just exit. Right, so um, that basically covers what you need to know about the different parts of Google Slides. Now, there's obviously more little details in here. Some of the cooler things that you can do, inserting audio, inserting video, all sorts of things like that. I haven't really played around with the word art and the diagram and the charts. Obviously, if you're presenting certain things, but this is not really stuff that teachers will use, but charts are quite nice because you can link all of it to a Google Sheet, and the information is updated live from that Google Sheet. So it's a good way of connecting your different parts of Google. Remember, all of these things are always connected to each other in different ways, how they all work together with each other. And then when we get to some more advanced stuff is when we start adding add-ons. Okay, I think it doesn't want to display now, but we can start using add-ons, which will actually add even more elements to our Google Slides that we can do really cool, interesting things with it. Another little thing that I'll show you now, but again, it's not necessary to show this to the in the Google fundamentals, because this can sometimes get a little bit confusing. But we can also, if we wanted to, or let's use this little guy, we can add links in our Google slide to kind of create a self-navigating slide type of thing. So if I select an image, I can turn it into a link that links to certain slides in this presentation. So I'll make this one link to the first slide. So if I'm going to click on this in a presentation, it'll actually take me back to slide one. And the same way, we can select certain things and we can link it to, right? So we can add various links to our slide, etc. So if we're showing it on a whiteboard in the front of the class, and we want to break out to specific links, we can just add those links into our presentation, click on it, and it jumps out to that presentation, and we can move back to it very quickly because it's all kind of contained in an online platform, which is just kind of jumping between tabs, kind of thing that you become more and more used to doing the more you do it. Right. So in terms of the assessment for this, the completing module 4.1's assessment, all that you need to do is you need to open up this blank presentation, and you need to complete the instructions that you find in the first slide. Obviously, there is no third slide, so I'm just going to delete this one quickly. Complete the instructions you see in the first slide. Complete all of these instructions that you'll see in the second slide. And then once you're done with all of that, you just need to submit this link. Just something that I forgot to say, please make sure when you submit this link, when you're going to copy and paste this one, that you click on the share and make sure that it is actually anyone with a link can view, so that we can, or if you want, you can change it to comment, and we could add comments as well. But just make sure that you've done that as well. If you haven't done that, then we won't have access to your slide and your document. Well, the document doesn't matter because it's published online, but just make sure that we are able to access your slide when we want to go through it and essentially mark it. Right. So with that said, we are done with the slide with slides. Now we're going to jump back to our, just just going to close up some of these things at the top. Now we'll jump back and we'll have a look at the next bit of our, we'll have a look at the rest of module 4. The rest of module 4 is now working on Google Sheets. Now, I think with slides, it makes more sense to spend a bit more time on slides and really going through the details and giving them time to explore. You'll need to manage this part of the this part of the session carefully, because we want to make sure they get enough time to really explore the functionality of the tool. Slides is how I've always viewed slides. It's a bit of a stripped down version of PowerPoint. It can do all the things that you actually need to have. But when you want to share your presentations, it just uses a lot less data than a PowerPoint would use. It has kind of been designed to try and be efficient when it comes with data. All of the G Suite essentially, it's trying, because all of it has to live online, it has been designed to be as data friendly as it can be. Images that you load into slides, for example, they go through a process that happens on Google's servers side, where they kind of optimize the image for display on the web. If you open it up on a phone, it's actually, you're not seeing the same image as the one that you're seeing on a laptop, because it picks up, you've got a smaller screen, it's going to resample that image into a smaller image. So all of that really leads to slides being a great incredibly useful, incredibly cool when used on mobile devices specifically. Right, so Google Sheets, the next one we want to look at. Now, Google Sheets, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to open up a new tab. You can go through this process, clicking on Google Sheets. It'll take you to the Google Sheets landing page, which kind of looks the same as the Google Docs one, and it looks the same as the Google Slides one, all the recent sheets that you've worked on. And then you can go and create a new sheet from there. But the same principle applies. What we spoke about with slides and with docs, navigate to the folder that you want your sheet in and put it there from the beginning. Otherwise, your drive just becomes a complete mess. And this is a big part of what we spoke about in Fundamentals 2. Keep it neat and tidy. Keep your drive organized so that you can find your files. Right. So we'll do the same thing. We're going to have a template. We're going to create the template, and the template's going to pop up over here. Right. So there's the template. Before we start working, actually, let's just dive into the template itself. Now, you'll see there's instructions over here that you need to complete. Very important. You only need to complete the first 5 instructions. You don't need to complete all of the instructions, right? So this is now when you are going to submit your evidence of learning. The attendees, again, they don't need to submit these instructions, or they don't need to submit this at all. This is just gives them some sample data to play around with, some sample things that they can actually go and edit. This part, the advanced tricks, is specifically for self-exploration, because if you're going to try and push to get to all 10 of these things in the session with the teachers, then you're going to rush through certain things and you won't be able to cover it in as much detail as you need to. These tick boxes will not autocomplete. This is just kind of a checklist for you to just see, okay, have I done this? Have I done that? Have I done this? Have I done that? So don't try and redo something until you get a tick box. You're going to wait forever. It's not going to autocomplete. Right. So the first thing we want to look at, just some basic formatting tools. Just for that, I'm just going to create a little blank sheet here to show you how some of the basic formatting tools work. Same basic principle. You can click over here. We can change it to, right, we can change the file name. All things are updated automatically. Then when we look at some basic formatting tools, what we're going to look at specifically in Sheets, really, the things that are important for us is just being able to change font sizes, being able to change fonts, bold, italic, etc. Before I dive into that, I just want to quickly show you what we're actually looking at when we're looking at the presentation part of Sheets. Just to take them through the whole process. I'm not going to take you through the whole process, through all of this, because I'm going to make an assumption, which is never a safe thing to do, that you understand some of these things. And that is just what the cells and the formulas understanding. Well, we'll get to formulas in a second, but understanding what we're talking about when we're referring to cells. Actually, you know what? Let's just go through the whole thing. Right. So when we're talking about everything in a Google Sheet is displayed in the same way as an Excel sheet. It's all arranged according to our columns at the top and our rows on the side. So when we are referring to specific cells, this one, for example, that I've highlighted would be A1. This would be B1. This would be C1. And this would be A3. And this would be B3. So whenever we've got something in here, so I'm just going to add my name. I'll just make it Yaku Van Niekerk. Right. I'm just going to say Cape Winelands. And let's just say this is 10 and this is 5. Okay. So it doesn't really matter what those things are supposed to be. What I'm going to do, actually, this part is not necessary. Just to show you quickly what we can do, we can remove columns, we can add columns, all of those things. So in this instance, I realize, okay, this column is not necessary. I'm going to right click here. I'm just going to delete the column. I can also hide columns if I'm not interested in it. And then, but I want to have some kind of instruction at the top, telling me or some labels at the top. So I'm just going to insert one above. We're just going to call this name, and we're just going to call this surname. We'll call this age, and we'll call this height. Right? I'm not 10 years old. Don't worry. And I don't know what height I would be if I was 5. But anyway, just so that we've got some random numbers to work with. Now, when we want to add some formatting to this, so we want to add some distinction between this, the first thing we want to do is we're not wild about the default font Arial, so we'll just select all of the information. Just a quick tip, if you want to select everything, if you click on this little block in the corner, it selects your entire sheet, all of the values in the sheet. So we're just going to select that little block, and we're just going to change the font to, we'll change it to Century Gothic. Right, so there we've got the font color Century Gothic applied. Now, what we want to do is we just want to add make the appearance of our headers a little bit different. So we're going to select those headers, and we're going to change the background. We'll make it blue, and we'll make the font white so that it stands out. We'll just make it bold so that it's nice and clear and easy to read. Right, so there I've got my header tab that's changed slightly, and I've changed my font as well. Now, if we want to add little blocks to things, there's the borders. We'll add our borders, and there we go. We've added some borders to things as well. Now, when we start, this part of the instruction it should be reasonably straightforward for them to understand. Again, we can change sizes like that. If we select multiple columns, let's say we've selected all 4 columns, and I change the size, it's going to evenly change all 4 of those to the same size that I've selected. Same applies to selecting multiple rows. I change the one row, all of them will space in that way, just to make sure that I've got my spacing sorted out to the way that I want it to be sorted out. If we double click on it over here, it's going to kind of resize the column to the minimum size. Or if it's too small, let's say my column was like that, I can double click and it resizes to that size as well. However, what I can do, just to show you something else here, when this cuts off, if there was no value over there, then what automatically by default, it'll just run into empty columns to complete empty columns. However, just to this little thing that we also need to be able to do when we change the position of the values in the cells. So obviously, if I've selected this one, I can decide left, right, center, etc. I can move it up and down. Let's make it all. We're going to move all of this to the middle of the thing. But another thing that we often don't use, text wrapping, you've got the option to either clip it, which means it stops where there's no more space, or we can often just let it run onto the second line as well. So let's just leave it like that. Doesn't really make a lot of sense, but we'll just leave it like that. And we'll just bring age back, 10. Okay, so now we're going to look at some of the formulas that we can start incorporating. Now, when we incorporate formulas, you'll notice that whenever we are adding anything, there's always this little formula block here that basically tells me what the formula is. If there's no formula, it'll just be the value that's in that block. So when we start adding formulas, and this is the part that gets a little bit more complicated for sometimes, but I think it's still a very useful thing to be able to do. A lot of people use auto formulas in Excel, um, which you can still do here, but we want to look at how we actually do some of these formulas, because the minute that you start actually typing it out manually, you can start doing way more interesting things. So you can resize this formula bar, make it a little bit bigger for yourself if you're going to have a long formula. We're not going to do long, complicated formulas today, so you don't worry about that. But here we're just going to say equals. Now, the minute that you've got an equal sign, this is an indication that we're starting with a formula, right? We're moving to the formulas, right? So an equal sign is an introduction to the formula that is starting. So if I've done that, now I can just simply, I can either go and say 10 plus 5, and that'll basically do the little formula for me, or I can use my cell referencing as I just spoke about it, C2, right? There we've got C2 selected, minus D2, right? So I've got these two selected, and then I have my value. Or what often works the best is just to say equals, and then it's looking for a value, and then you just click on the cell, and we just say plus, and we click on the cell, and it gives me the value. Now, if I had more things, let's say I'm going to say, I just add a few more, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's a few more values. I can click on this, and I can literally just drag it down. If I drag it down, it'll apply the same formula to all of those things. Now, in this way, we'll just quickly go through a basic explanation of how these formulas work. So now we're going to jump back to this sheet itself, and we're going to start having a look at what we actually need to do in order to complete this, because most of this is just looking at formulas, and then we'll look at the filters once we're done with the filters, because the filters is not part of what you need to do here, but filtering is a very useful tool that we can use when we're looking at information at a data set. Right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to complete these two red blocks. This one says complete, and we need to use a formula when we're doing this. We don't want to whip out the calculator, go and add these things, because that just takes too long. So the first thing that we want to do when we start doing this is to start explaining to them we've got a few different options when we are adding, when we've got formulas. Now you'll notice there's a pretty cool thing that they've got built in, where they've got automatically suggested formulas for you. The minute that you hit equals, it'll pop up. These are some of the things you might want to use. And for the most part, you're going to, well, for a lot of what we want to do, the simple things we want to do, the formula is going to be very cool in just being able to figure out that. So we're going to say equals, but just to type it out, just so for completeness sake, to add things together, we use the formula sum, and we use brackets. Now, please note, if you want to turn on the help, I think by default it should be on. What happens is the minute that I do this sum, and I add that, it's going to say, explain to me how the thing works, and I can click on learn more, and it'll just give me a little bit more information on how it works. Once I've drawn my bracket, now it's going to want input. Where does it need to go? Now I can actually select my value. So just click and drag, and then I've selected a range. So how the range works, the first one is the first cell that we start with. When we get to the colon, that basically means complete this formula for everything between this range. This is the first block, and this is the last block. And obviously, this would be able to apply if we were to say G2. You'll see all of that's been highlighted in orange, so you can select it from all of that. Right, so H2 to H11, and we're going to close the block, and you'll see there it does the sum for me. Average, same story. What we actually do is we would have typed out average and selected the same area. However, you'll see now the problem is with the autosuggest is the autosuggest is making a big mistake. You'll see if I select average like that, I'm going to end up with something that is a little bit too high. If we look at this and we see the highest mark is 88 and our average is now 83, the problem is what has happened is it's actually included this number as well. So that's why the auto tool doesn't always work. So we'll just change it to H11 and we'll get our average. Of course, you could have also, okay, I'll show you that in a minute. Um, so one could have also taken this number if you wanted to. We could have said equals this divided by how many we've got over here. We've got 1, 2, 3. You can count it. Or there's formulas that you can use as well. And we select that. We've got 10 candidates and we'll get to the same number. Right, but those are some of the more advanced formulas. Okay, so there I've filled in my total and my average as long as you are using the correct formulas. So I'm just going to quickly change this again to average and we'll just change that to 11. Right, so that's the first two. I think this is the first two steps that we've done. Right, now the next one is completing column G using a formula. Now, column G is over here. You don't need to use one formula. You can use a formula that you drag down. So what we want to do now is when we join text, there's different ways of doing this, but by far and away the simplest way of doing it is to just say equals, select the one that you want to use, and use the and symbol, and then select the second one you want to use. Now you'll see once I do this, suddenly Rebecca Rowan is one name, which we don't actually want. We want it to be split. So when you do that, we can add different things in here. So we can say and quotation mark, space, quotation mark, and, which means that we've got three values. We've got first F2, then we're going to add a blank space, then we're going to add E2. What you could also, so just to show you what that looks like, there we've got Rebecca Rowan. What you could also do if you wanted to, we could start with E2. We can add a comma, and then we can add the name, and we'll end up with something that looks like that. Once you've done that, simply click on the little block in the corner, click on that, drag it to the bottom, and you'll have the full name completed for all of those values. Right? There is a way, of course, to do this, to a different way to do it, but I'm going to show you the fancy and more tricky way to do it. Right. We'll do some session on that at another stage. Right. So there we've completed that part of it. Now, the next thing that is really, I think, an absolutely essential part of being able to view data effectively is freezing certain panels, freezing certain rows. Now, there's two ways of doing it in Google Sheets. The one way is that we click on View and Freeze, and then we can say how many rows and how many columns. So you can either, seeing as I've my selection is now on G5, when I say View Freeze, I can either say 1 row, 2 rows, or up to current row. So I can freeze it up to the row where my selection is, and the same with the columns. So you can do it like that. For me, what actually works easiest is if you move your cursor right here to the bottom of the column names, you'll see there's a little hand icon that appears. If I click on that and I just drag it down, that basically is the same as freezing the pane. Now, that doesn't look like much on this side. I'm just going to click here and I'm going to drag it over here. So now again, I'm going to freeze the pane to that point. What happens now, as you'll see, certain parts of this thing have been frozen. If I click on this sheet and I click here and I drag down, what's now useful is I can drag down and you'll see I'm at row 689. My top one is still frozen. Right, so this is just a very useful little trick in order to make sure that you can scroll through a long list of data and your headers never go away. Just by clicking and dragging either the columns or the rows to freeze the different parts that you want to freeze. Now, for this instruction, all you need to do is freeze row 1. There we've gone and frozen row 1. Simple as that. And then the last thing we want to do is sort according to surname without moving the instructions. Now, when we do that, when we want to sort these sorted like this, if we're going to click on this column, there you can either go to, if we select the column and we right click, we have the option to sort sheet A to Z. If I'm going to do that, It's just going to give me an error because there's actually merged images. So you know won't actually be able to do that. It'll restrict you from sorting it anyway. Let's just quickly, I think this is the merged one. That's also merged. So let's just do this. We're going to right click and we're going to sort. Okay, there's still some merged rows. I'm not sure where the merged rows are, that where they might be hiding. But anyway, right. So it's not gonna. It doesn't want to play with us now in terms of that. But that's anyway wrong. That's not what we want to do. If you want to sort only a part of the data, remember if you were going to sort according to things, everything was going to go changing around in a way that we don't actually want it to go to change around. If we only want to sort certain parts of it, right? So we'll select there and we'll select this first little column, or not this column, all these rows. When we select it and we click on data, you'll see there's an option where it says sort range. We don't want to actually sort the sheet. We only want to sort the range that we've selected now. So if we say sort range, it'll give me the option sort by column. And now because I've selected different columns, I can actually pick which one I want to sort it by. And this gives you even more options in terms of sorting, because let's say we're first going to sort according to column E, which is correct. Now we're sorting according to the surname, but we want to just add sort by column F as a secondary sort as well, because it doesn't necessarily by default sort it like that. Alternatively, what we could have done is we could have said, but then we want to sort it by column H. So we're first going to sort by according to surnames, and then we will sort according to the scores or whatever it is that we want to do. This gives us a lot of flexibility in how we sort our data. And if we just click sort, you'll see there we've got everything sorted according to the surname. And of course, the rest of the values are shifted around and sorted along with that. Right. So there we've got and sorted that. Okay, this is not supposed to be there. Um, we've sorted our rows. We've completed all of these little things that we need to complete. Now we'll see how much time we've got left, and I'll show you how to do some of these ones as well, if we still have time for that. But the next thing we want to have a look at, see this is at the bottom when we look at advanced. The next thing we want to look at is the filters in Google Sheets. Now, filters are very useful when we want to sort through certain data. And what makes filters in Google Sheets such a cool tool is you can actually just share something with someone else with view only, which means that they will not be able to edit any of the information, but they can apply a filter. So if we want to add the filters, so let's say we want to just filter some of the names. We're just going to select some surnames. We're just going to select this column, and then we click on this little filter, create a filter icon, right? If we click on that, what happens now is you'll see there's a little icon over there, which is our filter icon. If I click on this, it'll show me all the values that I've got over here and a couple of other things. We'll have a look at one or two other things here as well in a second, right? So if we only want to show certain values, now we're going to say clear. We only want to see Blackwater and Brookall's things, right? So now we're going to say okay, and it will only show the two rows in which they are. But obviously, that applies to the entire sheet now. So in this way, we only filter out Blackwater and Brookall because that's all that we want to see now. Blackwater Bull and Brookall Bernese. Right, now we're going to if we want to remove the filter, if it is basically highlighted in green, then you'll see that means the filter has been activated. So if we want to turn it off, we just turn it off. We can do the same thing if we want to apply the filter to two columns. Select two columns, create filter, and we're going to okay. Well, this instance, it's not really going to work because obviously there aren't multiple ones. But if we had, for example, 10, or let's just change it around so we can actually show you how it works. Sorry, I don't remember what his name was. Well, right, we actually want to have two Blackwaters. Right, so now we're going to filter it to Blackwater, two Blackwaters. We're going to filter it over here. We only want to select clear all. We only want to select Blackwater. You'll see now it selects both the surnames as Blackwater. If I click on filter again, it'll show only the two ones that I have over here. So now I can also select only this one, and now it's only going to select that. And in that way, you can play around with filters a lot in terms of how you're going to display your content. Now, if we want to just remove, we're just going to switch off these filters again. What becomes very useful is the fact that if you share this with someone who's got view only rights, right? So let's just quickly, I'm going to just give me a second so I can actually share this. Anyone with a link? Okay, can be a viewer, done. Um, right, so just to show you again, I haven't even actually signed into a Google account. You don't need a Google account to view this because I said anyone with a link can view. Now you'll see here I've actually got the option to now forgotten where this thing is again. Right, filter view. So if I now want to filter things here, because now I've opened it up as a viewer, I still need to apply filters, but I don't have the options to go and change anything around. You'll see the only options that I actually have is the print option and then the filter one. So when I click on filter, you'll see it's different in that I've got the option to create a temporary filter. Now, the temporary filter means that the minute that I close this, the filter is going to go away, but I can still actually apply filters however I want to apply the filters to this thing. So I can still go and select clear. I only want to see the information for those candidates, right? Some things will obviously it will display a little bit differently, but you'll see here now I filtered only those ones. But what's nice for me on my side, none of that has changed anything in how I view it. Right. So filters are a way of selecting certain information, viewing only parts of it with, and then especially if you're going to share the link only, people can do that same thing without necessarily doing anything to your sheet and breaking anything that we don't necessarily want them to break. Just to show you another practical use of filters, I suppose, is if we're going to select this column and now we're going to apply the filters again. So let's go here to filters. We're going to create a filter where we are going to say filter by condition. Now, filter by condition basically means I can sort of apply like a formula to this, right? So we're going to say greater than 50. Okay, and then we're going to say apply. Why is it not showing my greater than 50? Oh, sorry. Select all values. Right, so there we go. Now it's actually only displaying the learners that have a score greater than 50. And what I can do with these filters is then I can save this filter that I have. I can save it now as a filter. I can call it learners above 50. What that means is when I go back to this thing, I've got a default filter. I can just switch off my filter, but I can just click on that and I can add the learners above 50 and it'll just highlight the learners that are above 50. Right? We'll just unselect this quickly. So you'll see drop down learners above 50, it selects them, and none, it doesn't, it deselects them. Right. So again, a pretty nice way of using filters. Um, and displaying it. Remember, you only have to show us these first 5 things. When we get to filters, now we're getting to pretty advanced tools in Google Sheets. Obviously, this is the last part of Google fundamentals. This is now, you can safely assume if everyone has gone through all this, this is now 4 hours worth of, sorry, not 4, this is now 8 hours worth of training that people have gone through. So by now they should be a little bit more comfortable with a lot of the platform. Depending on how much time you have, you can continue showing them more tricks and more fancy things. Here at advanced, what I'm going to show you very quickly, because I would prefer to leave us a little bit of time for questions still. The one thing I want to show you is conditional formatting. So if we are going to apply conditional formatting, let's say we select these scores, then all that you do, if you go to format, you'll see there's an option that says conditional formatting. And what conditional formatting does is you can either apply certain formatting things, but what's also quite nice is you can use a color scale. So we can say the minimum value, or we're going to say the number. The minimum point is 0. That's going to be red. The midpoint is 50. And that's going to be yellow. And our max point is 100. And that's going to be green. Right. Or let's just make it a nice, doesn't matter. Right, green. So what happens now is you'll see I've created an automatic color scale, and the marks are highlighted in a way, like in a certain way. You can, again, what you can do with the conditional formatting, you can also say conditional formatting. Just remove that one. We're going to add another rule, and we're going to say the number is less than 40. We want to highlight those in red because those are the ones that we are concerned about. So we apply formatting rules like that just to highlight certain things. Visually, information makes a lot more sense if we can add a visual kind of thing, right? So that was just a conditional formatting. This calculate the average for the first learners in F3. This is literally just a case of, there's different ways of doing that, but let's just say we're going to do that because this is the easiest. Right, there's an average that we've calculated. Ironically, it's kind of the same. Well, it's very close to the same as the average of the rest. And the last thing I think we're going to talk about, because the working across tabs might just be a little bit, it will take a little bit longer to explain, but actually protection is also going to take a little bit longer. But I'm just going to explain quickly. This is a part that you'll have to kind of go and figure out yourself, but this is where it gets very cool. You can protect data in the sense that if we wanted to, we can select certain cells, right click and say protect range. What that means is we share this thing with editing access. However, once it's been shared with editing access, you can't actually, even though they can open it up and they can edit it, they can't edit those two blocks. This is a way of protecting certain parts of the sheet. Alternatively, what also works very well is you can protect an entire sheet and then just say accept those two cells. So if I were to do this, what that means is I'm the only one who can edit everything else, but I'll give access to the other people to edit those two blocks. Which, when you start really applying yourself, can become a very useful tool for when multiple people are going to access this. Remember, this becomes, Google Sheets is incredibly useful when you give the entire staff, as an example, access to a single sheet, where they then update their contact details, as an example. They do it themselves. Now, if you wanted to go through that effort, you can go and add data, or you can go and add protection that each cell is only accessible to certain people if you really want to go into all of that detail. Or what you can just do is you can just make sure that you're going to protect the headings, you're going to protect other things, that they can only add content, but they can't go and mess with the whole thing, essentially. So it's a key thing that you can keep the idea of how you add protection to your cells. Keep that in the back of your head. So I just kind of showed that very quickly. This part I'm not going to show now. I think we'll rather stop there, and then if there are questions, or actually working across tabs, just to show you very quickly, working across tabs, it's pretty straightforward. If we want to add import information, see there, here I've got another tab. There's the main tab. If I want to add information from a different tab, if I say go here to this one to equals, and I click on the other sheet, and I actually just click on a value somewhere, so we just want to import that, you'll see that it automatically tells me it goes and searches for that value, and then it adds that value, right? So there we go. And you can alternatively, if you want to import quite a bit, we can say B1, and we're going to import all the way to H, what's it, 14. Okay, so if we want to do that, it becomes a little bit different. I was hoping it's going to work easily. There we go. There's the importing of all of that information over there. So this is working across multiple sheets. Um, Again, I'm not going to show you exactly what I did there. That becomes quite complicated. This last one, I'll leave you to figure out on your own. This is by far the most tricky part of what you can do in this, not of what you can do, but what we are illustrating in this sheet. But again, please note you don't have to complete, if you only need to complete the first 5 instructions in order to qualify to train the Google Fundamentals 4 as well. Right, and that brings me to the end of the session. I'm going to stop the recording now, and this is now the opportunity for you to ask questions if there's anything that you are still struggling with.